In this video, we're going to cover synthetic division, and we're going to see one application of that. So the best way to learn synthetic division, in my opinion, is to actually do it by example. So the idea with synthetic division is to do long division, but much quicker. So the first thing you're going to do is we're going to basically drop all of the variables and only work with the coefficients. So I'm going to start by listing out for the polynomial that we are dividing into. I'm going to list its coefficients out. So in front of the x cubed would be a 1, since I don't see anything. In front of the x squared would be a 4. In front of the x is a -5, and in front of the last term, or I should say the constant, is -14. So I've just listed out the coefficients only. Okay, now next to it, what I'm going to be dividing by, the x minus 2. So first thing I want to note is we can only divide by a binomial with a leading coefficient of 1. If it doesn't have a leading coefficient of 1, then you can't use synthetic division. So that means you would just switch to long division. Okay, so since this particular binomial qualifies, it has a leading coefficient of 1, I'm going to just write in not the -2, but just 2. So I'm taking the opposite sign from this. I'm taking the opposite sign. And the reason is that's compensating for the subtraction step in the long division. So by doing the opposite sign in this little box, that's going to compensate for the subtraction step. Okay, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give myself a little space, and I'm going to bring down the very first term. Always bring down the first term. And what I'm going to do with that, whenever it gets below the bar, I'm going to multiply that number times the number in this little box here. So I'm going to take that 1 and times it by 2, which gives me 2. And that I'm going to write in the next column under the next term. And now I'm going to go ahead and combine these two numbers. So 4 plus 2 is 6, and that goes below the bar. So now I'm going to take 6 and I'm going to multiply it by what's in the box. So 6 times 2 is 12, and that goes under the next number. And then I combine -5 and plus that 12 is going to be +7. And then I multiply. 7 times 2 is 14. That goes under here. And then I combine -14 and 14 is 0. And this last number right here is the remainder. So what we have found are the coefficients of the answer. So these are the coefficients of the answer. So the answer is going to start with a leading coefficient of 1. Here, I'm going to write it in blue. And its degree is going to be 1 degree less than what we started with. So because we were working with an x cubed, our answer is going to start with x squared. If we had been working with an x to the 4th, we would have started with x cubed. If we were working with x to the 6th, I would have started with x to the 5th. So it's 1 degree less. The answer is 1 degree less. So 1x squared, and now the next term is 6x. So I'm going down in descending order. And then the last term would be 7. That's my constant. Now, I typically don't put the 1 in the front. So this would be the answer. Let's try it again with another example and see if we can't get our mind around every step. Because once you understand the steps, it's very quick. Let's try this again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the numbers of the coefficient of what I'm dividing by, those coefficients. So I have a 5 in front of the x cubed, a -2 in front of the x squared. I see that I am missing a term. I am missing an x term. So I'm going to put a 0 for any missing terms. We're always going to go in order, 1 degree less, 1 degree less, 1 degree less. So there's going to be a 0 there for a missing term. And that'll always be the case. And then the last term, that constant of 1. And then in the box, I'm going to put the opposite sign of this number right there, which is going to be positive 3. Oops, I was using my highlighter. Silly. Positive 3. There we go. And now I'm going to draw my line, drop the first term. So that's a 5. And now start multiplying. 5 times 3 is 15. That goes under here. 15 and negative 2 are going to give me 13. 13 times 3 is 39. Add that and give me 39. Here, I'm going to need my calculator for this one. 39 times 3 is 117. And then 117 and 1 is 118. And that last number is my remainder. So this is the first time we've seen a remainder. So here's how I'm going to write my answer. My answer is going to start 1 degree less than what we started with in this. So it's going to be an x squared. So it's going to be 5x squared. I'm taking this first number here, 5. And now 13x, that's coming from this number here. And then plus 39. Now, to write the remainder, what they do is they take the remainder and they put it over what we originally divided by. And they write it as a fraction. So whenever you see that, you know that the remainder wasn't a 0. It was something else. And what that means is that x minus 3 didn't go in evenly. But that's fine. We could still do the division, and this would be the result. So let's try this process again. This time, we have a bunch of missing terms because we're doing x cubed. So the coefficient of the first term is a 1, but then we're missing x squared and x, and then I'm putting the 8. So we're missing 2 terms in this one. In the box, I'm going to put the opposite sign of this number. Switch to highlighter, but it didn't switch. There we go. Which in this case is finally we have a negative 2. It's the first time we've had a negative. All right. And then let's drop the first term, which is 1, and start multiplying. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2, plus that 0 is negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, plus the 0 is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, plus the 8 is 0, and that's my remainder. So I didn't have a remainder this time. So my answer, again, we've been doing x cubes these whole time, is going to be 1x squared. I can put the 1 in front, but I don't have to. Minus 2x plus 4, and I don't need to write a remainder on this one. Now, I believe in my open math, some of the questions actually have it set up where you'll put the remainder separately, and you will only need to put the number. Oh, goodness me. It is not updating when I'm asking it to. You will only need to put the number, the 118. You don't need to put it in fraction form. So this kind of answer that I have in the box is what you'd put if they don't indicate a special spot for the remainder. Otherwise, you'll just write 118 as your remainder. Okay, so this last problem kind of shows an example of where we can use synthetic division. We're being asked to find the horizontal intercepts, but let me tell you a piece of information. We happen to know, how we know is because I know, we know that x minus 1/2 is a factor with multiplicity 2. Which means that this thing, if I were to factor it, it's going to have an x minus 1/2 squared and then a bunch of other stuff. And that's the other stuff I'd like to find. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use synthetic division to divide 1/2 into this, the x minus 1/2 into this. So basically, I'm dividing this thing by x minus 1/2 twice, because it has a multiplicity of 2. And so we're going to use synthetic division to do this. And it's actually going to go pretty quick. And if you need your calculator, go and grab your calculator. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write all of the coefficients here of this. I see no terms missing. Oh, and we finally have a different degree for the polynomial. So that's exciting. So this is going to be a 4 for the x to the 4th, negative 4 for x cubed, negative 11 for x squared, 12 for the x, and then negative 3. And then in the box is going to be a 1/2 positive, since the factor is x minus 1/2. All right, so let's divide. So 4 drops down. 4 times 1/2, basically it's just cutting it in half, right? So 4 times 1/2 is 2. -4 plus 2 is -2. -2 times 1/2, cutting that in half is just a -1. -11 and -1 add up to -12. -12 times 1/2 is -6. Adding those together will be +6. 6 times 1/2 is a 3. Adding those together is 0, which is perfect because that's the remainder. And we knew it was going to go in evenly. So now, rather than write my answer, I know that this has a multiplicity of 2. So I know it's going to factor again. This answer is divisible by 1/2 again. So I'm going to go ahead and just repeat my synthetic division right here. I'm just going to start again, do a new line, bring down the 4, and go. So 4 times 1/2 is 2. That's going to be 0. 0 times 1/2 is 0. It's going to be -12. -12 times 1/2 is -6. And then those two add up to 0. And we're done. Because this is part of the previous problem. This 0 right here, that's the remainder from the previous problem. So I don't need to include it. Now, if I were to keep going, if it happened to have a multiplicity of 0, right, I just keep going if I need to. But I'm going to go ahead and stop here because now I've done the multiplicity of 2. So what I'm left with is, I know that this thing factors into x minus 1/2 squared. And then my answer here, I'm going to take the answer here, I'm going to write it out. So this is actually, since it was divided twice, this is going to be an x squared, right? So the first time, if I had written the answer from right here, this would have started with an x cubed in the answer. But this one's going to start with an x squared since I divided twice. So it's going to be 4x squared. And then 0x. So I'm not going to put the 0. I'm just going to go ahead and write -12. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and solve this or factor this because I'm going to solve this so that I can, actually I can solve it without factoring. I'm going to go ahead and solve this so that I can find my intercepts. So that's what they asked me to find. It's the horizontal intercept. So I happen to already know, since they gave me information, that 2 of the intercepts are going to occur at 1/2 0, right? So I already know for the answer that 1/2 0 has occurred twice. I'm not going to list it twice though. Okay, that's one intercept. The other intercept I'm going to get from here. So I'm going to go ahead and set that equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to, since it doesn't have an x term, I'm just going to use the square root method. So divide by 4, x squared equals 3. Take the square root of both sides. So x equals plus or minus radical 3. And that is going to be the other 2 intercepts. So I have an intercept at radical 3, 0 and negative radical 3, 0. And those are the intercepts for this problem, with the first one occurring technically twice. And that's an application that you're going to see in the future of synthetic division. But it gave us a chance to practice synthetic division one more time and with a fraction.